5 Democrats joined a number of Republicans with a Republican president, a Republican senator, a Republican House to pay our debts. We believed it was our patriotic duty. We all took an oath of office swearing to the obeisance there of what we believed, American values, and we paid our debts. We did it then bipartisanly, overwhelming vote, and we should do it again. And we know that Senator McConnell doesn't seem to think that. Let me get one thing straight, though, about what we've talked about. The infrastructure we've had, investments we passed in the bipartisan bill we're working on now are fully paid for. It's simple. Instead of American taxpayers racking up debt due to corporate handouts and tax cuts for wealthy CEOs, those corporations, those billionaires, for the first time are finally going to help us pay for the investment we need in our greatest asset, the American people. It's not just nurses and teachers and firefighters that are paying their taxes. It's a time that the wealthiest people in this country.
This is live. Janet Yellen talking about the stock fall and Yellen and her potential thoughts on the economy. Anyway, it's live. Let's listen.
We paid their fair share. Corporate greed's a big reason why we needed this investment in the first place. For decades, we had a corporate business model, I mentioned that in my opening statement, where they plow all their cash into stock buybacks and bonuses and other schemes where the money ends up in their pockets instead of funding the real economy. The economy of a year ago may have looked pretty good from a corporate boardroom or may have looked pretty good from the Dirksen office building. But anyone who got their, as Lincoln would say, their public opinion bass would know that so many workers, entire neighborhoods, entire towns were not seeing the gains, those stock market gains translate into opportunity for them and their family. We're changing that. One of the best things about our economy today is for the first time in decades, first time in some people's memory, workers are starting to gain a little power in our economy over their schedules, over their wages, over their benefits. They're going to gain a whole lot more power when we invest in jobs in their towns and childcare and housing and the child tax credit and education and workplace protections and everything workers need to feel stable and think, just so they know finally in this country they're getting a fair shake. I thank Secretary Yellen for joining us. Thank Jerome Powell for joining us. The meeting is adjourned.
Wow.
Thanks,
Wow.
sir.
Okay.
Okay.
Time to do a summary.
Yes.
Oh my gosh.
That was a lot.
That was very long.
That was a lot.
We're at 3 hours and 29 minutes of this live stream. Woo!
Nope, just cut to the chase. I want y'all to hear just the basics.
So if you have not yet gotten your free stock with public.com, go to metkevin.com/public and get your free stock worth up to $70 with public.com. All right, let's go ahead and do a breakdown here. Just give me 1 second if you don't mind. And then I will do a quick summary here.
So while Kevin's humming,
okay,
he's going to break down what happened with this meeting with Congress and Janet Yellen and where we're going with the inflation. And, you know, we're going into the fourth quarter of this year. And I think that we all need to
20 seconds.
Need to stay awake to what's about to happen. So let's hear from Kevin's point of view, and then we'll get in the chat room and talk to everybody about our point of view.
Collateral, and then we're going to do this summary. Just uno momento, please. 7 and
make sure you like and share the video. I think it's important that we have a discussion. Thank you guys so much for watching. I appreciate it.
Oh, 82. Oopsies.
Make sure you like and share the video. I think it's important that we
21K.
That's a lot.
Boom. All right. Done. Yes. Trading. Lots of trading. Got to send those alerts in the Stocks and Psychology Money Group. All right, when I send it.
NC Worker, how you doing?
All right. Sorry, that was
Matt Lean. Thank you so much for watching.
Right. Let's do the recap.
Okay, let's talk about the recap of this, what we just watched.
And we will record it as if it's a new video. All right. Here we go. Hey everyone, me Kevin here. Janet Yellen and Jerome Powell of the Federal Reserve, Secretary Yellen, of course, from the Treasury Department, just spoke before Congress, testified before Congress. I covered this. I just completed a 3.5-hour live stream. And let's go through just the gist of what was said by Yellen. Then we'll talk about what Powell said. So we'll just break them down like that. So first, Yellen starts by saying it would be devastating to not raise the debt ceiling. She says the debt ceiling is really just like paying bills that we've already incurred. She says it's kind of like ordering at a restaurant. And then if we don't raise our debt ceiling, it's kind of like saying, yeah, we don't want to pay. We just don't feel like it. It's like you already ordered, you already signed up for the debt, and now you don't want to pay it. Like, it doesn't make sense not to raise the debt ceiling, she says. She says if we fail, aka if Congress fails to raise the debt ceiling, we will have a financial crisis, interest rates will skyrocket, and we will face financial calamity. Then she was asked, is it correct that once the genie is out of the bottle, it doesn't go back in? That is, once we screw up and we mess up the debt ceiling, that now the calamity is unleashed, so to speak. She says that's correct. It would be a manufactured crisis, a self-inflicted wound of enormous proportions. Of course, she had these pre-prepared, but the lines are pretty damning. And I think the point is really just to convey the message to Congress, like, let's go, raise the debt ceiling. Anyway, she says nothing would be more harmful than failing to raise the debt ceiling. Then she moved on to answer questions about the stepped up tax basis. So just a quick explanation of what the heck that is. Basically, I'm going to keep this very, very simple on a stepped up basis because it can be very complicated. Let's say you bought a house for $300,000, and let's say nothing changes to that tax basis. Basically, $300,000 is your tax basis. It goes up to $1 million in value. Well, now you have $700,000 in gain. You can now sell that house, do a 1031 exchange if it's a rental property, buy another house, take that $700,000 gain, move it into the second property through an exchange. So you never paid taxes even though you sold. You can't do that in stocks. You can do it in real estate. Now, let's say that $1 million property goes up to $2 million. Now you have $1 million in gains, and I'm oversimplifying here. I know there's selling costs and all this other stuff, depreciation stuff. I'm simplifying. Now you have $1 million in gains plus $700,000 in gains in the other one. You've really got $1.7 million in untaxed gains. The stepped up tax basis says if you now get hit by a bus, because let's say you were supposed to pay taxes on that $1.7 million, which just for reference, taxes on $1.7 million, that kind of long-term capital gains would probably be somewhere around $400,000. So let's say you had to pay $400,000 in taxes, and you're about to sell that property and pay $400,000 in taxes, but then you get hit by a bus and die. The United States government says, just kidding, you don't have to pay us that $400,000, aka your children don't have to pay that $400,000. So your basis goes up. That's called the stepped up tax basis. Now your children the very next day could sell the property and not pay any taxes on that $1.7 million in gains. This is one of the big core tenets of the real estate investing course, where we talk about investing in real estate and taking advantage of the fact that you can build this insane long-term wealth and basically never pay taxes. Now, currently, there's a discussion about potentially removing this stepped up tax basis, which says, okay, there are plenty of other ways to make money with real estate investing. It doesn't really benefit you until you die anyway. It's more of a family thing. But that's the stepped up tax basis. She says she is in support of eliminating the stepped up tax basis, that some income is just never taxed. The wealthy like this, basically what I just described. And she argues that there are two things you can do. You can tax those gains at the moment of death rather than giving that stepped up basis, or you can do things like just basically let the heirs carry that 1.7 million in gains, let's say in this example, not pay taxes at the time of death, and whenever the heir sells, then pay taxes. She sees this as a loophole. And so she wants to close this loophole, and Congress has discussed potentially closing that stepped up tax basis loophole. So then she mentions that clearly inflation this year is going to be above 2%. We are seeing it taper off, but it will probably end the year around 4%. Then there was a question, I'm going to keep this one brief because I really want to get to what Powell said. She mentions, she was asked by Senator Loomis, hey, what's up with these new IRS disclosure requirements? Basically, Janet Yellen is saying, look, banks already report when you earn interest. What we just want banks to do now is report on that same kind of 1099-T form, the aggregate inflows to a bank account and outflows. The reason for that is they're trying to say, hey, look, if $1 million went into an account, $500K went out of an account, like, hey, did we get taxation on that extra 500K? Like, did we actually see taxes on that money? Because presumably if 500K was expenses, like, hey, was the other 500K taxable? Then she goes into talking about how we have a tax gap. Senator Loomis said, hey, this is a violation of privacy. Janet Yellen says, hey, look, we need to be taxing. We need more audits. We need to make sure people are paying their fair share. Then Mr. Rounds, Senator Rounds asked, what if we become the next Greece? How can we keep spending at unreasonable levels
Exactly.
and creating these
Crazy.
social welfare programs like
Right.
the $3.5 trillion infrastructure package? She responded in sort of a twofold answer, and I'm combining responses here because she's responded this multiple times. She says, look, you could look at our levels of debt in two ways. One is debt to GDP, in which case it's high. But if you look at debt to payments, we're at a super low level. Interest rates are super low. Now, separately, I've done research on this, and I've noticed that even if our interest payments doubled, we would still be at a lower payment to income level in the United States compared to where we were in the 1990s. So we've got a lot of capacity to support these debt payments, obviously, unless interest rates just sort of skyrocket in the longer term.
You have more people working than though.
This $3.5 trillion
the work status was different
proposed by Joe Biden and Democrats in Congress will be fully paid for by higher taxation. Then this, of course, led to a lot of challenges like, hey, well, aren't these programs inflationary? For example, Tim Scott was trying to get Jerome Powell to comment on them, saying, hey, yeah, these programs create inflation. This is bad. Of course, Jerome Powell punted on that, which we'll talk more about Jerome Powell in a moment, but he just says he doesn't talk about fiscal policy. So totally punted on that. Yellen again says, hey, look, it's paid for by increasing taxes. Tim Scott says, hey, well, wait a minute. How are you supposed to make an economy and a marketplace more efficient if you're taxing capital gains instead of at 23%, but at 43%, or you're raising the corporate tax rate, which corporate taxes are usually paid by employees or consumers? Aren't you taxing away any potential gains to the marketplace? Janet Yellen took the counter approach here because usually, like just zooming out for a moment here, usually when you tax, you create a deadweight loss in society and you end up hurting economies. Generally is what taxes do. That's sort of textbook economics, right? Janet Yellen, however, takes the counter approach and says, well, wait a minute. We cut taxes like crazy in 2017 under Trump, especially corporate taxes, and we didn't see higher investment. Instead, what we saw is more hoarding of stocks and higher wealth for richer people. And so she's kind of countering with the opposite argument that, well, when we lowered taxes, we didn't see more investment. So if we raise taxes, why would we potentially see lower investment? That's sort of the argument that she's making here. In terms of the biggest risk in the economy, she believes that shadow banking is the biggest risk that could trigger sudden fire sales in the economy. She mentions that the National Economic Council is working on estimating when supply chain issues will be resolved and this was a big one, wants to find a way to make the child tax credit permanent. She says after just one payment of families receiving the child tax credit, that's $300 for children under 6 years old, $250 for children under 18 years old per month. We only have that for 1 year right now. In the $3.5 trillion package, there's a proposal to extend this for 4 to 5 years.
That is correct, Mr.
Janet Yellen
Hawkins.
saying she wants to potentially make this permanent. She mentions that after just one payment, individuals who were food insecure dropped, or who reported they were food insecure, their families dropped by 24%. And that really the child tax credit is a way of helping people pay for food and clothing. She also says she's not in favor of mandatory work requirements to receive the child tax credit because there are a vast majority of individuals already working who are receiving them. There are income thresholds, obviously, for this. And some people who receive this are disabled or are grandparents who are retired who are also getting the support they need to help children. Now, let's jump on over to Powell. So that was a full summary of what the heck Janet Yellen just said. Now let's talk about what Jerome Powell just said. So Jerome Powell says, first, that you should get life insurance in as little as 5 minutes. A link down below by going to metkevin.com/life. There's also a new coupon code for the programs coming out. I think it's Diamond Hands, but anyway, the prices have gone up. But anyway, I don't know that that's even going to be in the description yet. Okay, what Jerome Powell actually said. Jerome Powell said, number one, it's essential to raise the debt ceiling. Potential effects could be severe of not raising the debt ceiling. He says we have not yet met the need for, or have not yet met the criteria for maximum employment. But he says that we're still going to be accommodative for the economy throughout mid next year. And so basically what he's saying is just because we're tapering does not mean we're at max employment. We're going to taper, but still accommodate the economy by still printing money, basically, buying bonds, essentially printing money, and in doing so until at least mid next year. Then, and he put emphasis on this word. He said, I'm going to emphasize it the way he did. However, the test for raising rates is substantially higher. He said that. I actually saw some tweets go out after he said that, and they forgot the word substantially. And I thought that was very, very important, and especially since he put emphasis on that. So he's saying, look, we're going to taper, but the test for raising rates is substantially higher, which is really good. Now, the Fed's already given us a forecast that they want to raise rates one time in the second half of 2022, 2 times in 2023, and 3 times in 2024. And these were 0.25% bumps, right?
Right.
So that's the tentative trajectory. When asked about inflation, he mentions that he does see that inflation is much more structural now than what we saw with used car prices. And he says this is because of the supply chain issues. That supply chain issues have not necessarily gotten better, but they've actually potentially gotten worse. Look at port congestion, look at shipping, look at issues in China, look at issues at our ports. You've even got, I think it was the Port of Long Beach just put out an alert that they're starting to do 24-hour shifts in some cases. Well, 24-hour openings in certain parts of the port, not individuals doing 24-hour shifts. But anyway, he mentions that we believe inflation will come down, but you look at measured inflation, most of it at the moment that's high is still coming from a small category of items. We expect that to be transitory. All right. He's mentioned that a lot, and obviously he's gotten a lot of heat for this transitory inflation being quite persistent. Then he talked about getting a central bank digital currency. He mentions getting this done is important, but even Pat Toomey was pushing for this, saying, hey, we want to make sure that we use this, that it's not something that's used to spy on Americans. It's not something that becomes a retail bank, but it's something that creates huge competitive opportunities, and we should really have a digital dollar. So let's get going on a central bank digital currency. That way the private sector could start operating with it. And Jerome Powell agreed with this. Elizabeth Warren came out with, I think really she was trying to just zinger Jerome Powell. She asked him about the Volcker rule with private funds, to sort of cast doubt on some changes that led to potentially how Archegos collapsed. Jerome Powell kind of dodged answering this question, but most importantly, from what Elizabeth Warren said, she basically tried to slam him. She mentioned that there are too many Republicans in positions of power, especially at the Federal Reserve. Keep in mind, Jerome Powell is a Republican. And she says that it's people like Jerome Powell that basically planted the seeds for the 2008 financial crisis. And therefore, Jerome Powell is a dangerous man and she will not support his renomination. That was like a slam. Like that literally got news coverage.
I'm not a Jerome Powell fan, by the way.
Popping off.
And I'm a Republican.
And
I'm not a Jerome Powell fan.
What she was expecting. It's a very AOC style state.
Because they carry the title, don't mean
very
they
populist
and
truly
with the party.
Potentially, some would say progressive. Looking out for the little guy. Anyway, then when asked about the biggest risk for the economy, Jerome Powell, and he's mentioned this before, although it never gets as much press as I think it deserves, he says the biggest risk to our economy is actually cyber. He says with banking, we have very good stress tests against the potential for collapses or a collapse. But what we have not yet really fully faced is a serious cyber risk. And so these are the updates on exactly what Jerome Powell said, on what Janet Yellen said. I think they're insightful. The market was selling off during their discussion and testimony throughout the day. Volatility index jumped, stocks fell. A little bit of a mess, a lot of uncertainty in the marketplace right now, and I'm sure later we'll have a thorough update on my thoughts on what's going on in the stock market. Volatility index right now up 25.3% on the day. That is not as high as it was earlier when we peaked around 30%. All right, folks, I thank you very much for being here. Really appreciate it as always. Check out the program's link down below. Check out the life insurance you can get at Ladder Life by going to mettkevin.com/life. And folks,
thank you guys so much for watching. So let me just kind of break down my perspective of what we have just watched and where we're at right now. We are in a very strange time in American history, and I think that those of us, well, let's talk reality. Those of us who are not sleeping at the wheel realize that we are in a global economic false inflated pandemic recovery era of history. And because we are in this pandemic, and because every country is dealing with their own financial crisis on top of this one world global economy crisis, where does that put us as individuals? Where do we see ourselves as Americans? How do we balance all of this? I would say when you have a chance, go back and watch all of Kevin. Meet Kevin is great. I love watching Meet Kevin. He did the 3 hours. I was not going to broadcast 3 hours for you. I would just rather for you to hear just the basic summary of everything. Thank you guys for, let me say hi to a couple of people I did earlier. Angela Live, thank you so much for being on. I appreciate it. Mr. Salt, yes, this is all created by the left, but this is, don't get it twisted, there's rhinos involved too. Rhino, yeah, you just said that. Truly, most rhinos, this is true. I agree with you. There are rhinos involved. Mr. Salt's here, Angela's here. And I thank God for you guys on YouTube who are also watching. And he said, hi, Sally. It's actually hi, Shirley, but it's okay. We're talking about the cost of raising and inflation. So let's get to the basics of what I want you to understand. They are talking about raising the debt ceiling. How do you feel about that? Raising the debt ceiling. What do you think about them talking about raising interest rates the first quarter? They're going to do it quarterly, like Kevin said. I don't think they're going to be able to do that. And let me tell you why. Because I didn't watch the whole 3 hours. So I'm going to tell you from a real estate perspective. They have not released the moratorium. And people are not paying mortgage and they're not paying rent. And a lot of these people still have not gone back to work. The EDD just ended in September. So people are not going to be able to get the money that they were able to get, right? So now they need to go back to work. Some people want to go back to work, some don't. In the meantime, the federal government is spending like some woman on the street that thinks she's going to get paid every weekend for giving love to somebody, meaning that we're now got the Afghanistan issue that are flooding into states like California and Texas, and where the feds are subsidizing and giving these people housing and food, and yet we have a high level of American people who don't have food or shelter. Now stay with me, don't go anywhere with this. I want you to understand there's an imbalancement in America. And where is the answer? Where is the solution? No one's talking about solution. They're talking about increase of debt to offset the debt spending. Increase of one way of increasing costs on one aspect to offset the spending on another aspect, but not fixing the issues that are at hand or before the average day American people when we're talking about homelessness or housing crisis or the moratoriums. Now, what are the moratoriums for those? I'm trying to break this jarble down to just basic things that apply to people like me and you, right? Because that's what I like about urban game changers. When we get in urban communities, we hold these people accountable, but we need to have a sensibility of who we are. We need to have a sensibility on a basics of how does this affect me and my life and my children, and what should I be looking for the last fourth quarter of this year, and what should I be expecting the first quarter of the beginning of next year, because we are still in a pandemic and we're still recuperating, and we still have states that basically are doing their own things. Georgia never shut down. Atlanta never shut down. California shut hard. New York shut hard. Some states wear masks. Some don't wear masks. That all affects the economy, believe it or not. It really does. So going back to what I said about interest rates and people not paying for mortgages and people not paying to rent, that's going to affect the American people's lifestyle. because you're going to see more people with their stuff thrown in the streets. You're going to see more people who are saying, hey, I can't refinance. So we call it in real estate, the fire sale could be coming, which means if you are smart, you'd list your home with me. My name is Shirley Hussar, and you can go to caltexashome.com. I talk about that. I have that on my link on my Facebook and on my Instagram, so follow me there. But you do need to think about if you're not able to pay that mortgage and you're 6 to 8 to 2 years behind, that fire sale means that a lot of people will be flooding into that market, and you could have a collapse in the economy with houses coming on the market because they'll finally release the moratorium. I don't think they're going to release the moratorium because that wasn't the discussion. The discussion was about inflation and the risk of debt and the hype rates. But I want to talk about it in the sense that all affects the fact of us as average everyday American people who are going into the end of the year saying, well, are they going to stop these people from not paying and make them pay? And if they have to pay, who's to say they're able to keep their property? Who's to say they're able to keep renting their property? They're not. So you're going to have a flood of homes and a flood of people not having a place to stay. That means you'll have an increase of homelessness, and that means you'll have a high flex of a lot of properties on the market, which means how do you raise interest rates with the hype of properties being taken over and backed by the bank? And you start seeing the NODs, the notice of defaults, that'll be rising. I mean, what is your guys' thoughts on this? This is a huge mess, Angela, on Facebook. Absolutely. This is definitely a huge, huge mess. And they were supposed to never raise the ceiling, debt ceiling. Well, when you have irresponsible people like you see with this administration running this country and doing things out of line, going against the Constitution, taking away American citizens' rights on their bodies and their livelihoods, and basically going to tell you you have to get vaccinated or you lose your job and your pension and your retirement, well, you're causing civil unrest. So now you're basically saying that, hey, we don't need no debt ceiling. It's like, you know what it's like? It's like going to your dad and he says, you know what? Don't even worry about how much it costs. Just get whatever you want. Do whatever you want to do. Peace and love and happiness. Well, this is not peace and love. This is chaos and recourse and aftermath. That's what you're dealing with right now. Hey, Kate, how you doing right now? So, how are we going to recuperate? How are we going to cope? I think that's a good question. How do we cope? For me, I think that there's 4 points I want you to make. If you can get a piece of paper and a pen and write this down, it will help you. And it's how I'm dealing with what all this is going on, because I listen to Peter Schiff. Peter Schiff is an economist who I love, and I love his wife. I listen to Ken McElroy, who talks about the real estate aspect, right? Peter is an economist. He talks about the financial and the gold market. And then Kevin kind of is a little bit all over the place with that and stocks. And I love Kevin, meet Kevin. So, and there's other people who are out there that we all kind of chime our ear into. And I think the key thing that, first of all, you have to stop and look at your situation. So the first thing I would do is control the noise. There is a lot of noise in regards to politics, but there's a lot of noise in regards to the economy, inflation, false inflation, interest rates hikes, non-interest rate hikes. Will they release the moratorium and let these people who should be paying, if I pay, you should pay? But you're thinking you don't have to pay. So now there's all these other programs out there, these governmental programs to offset the non-paying people. Well, what about the people who paid and did good and did right? Do they get offset and taken care of? No, they don't. So now government has to raise some type of governmental assistance or programs to offset the people who didn't do what they could have done, but they played the game of, I'm just going to lay back and not work and not pay bills. And now they're going to cry on national newsworthy issues regarding all of that. And who pays for that? The American taxpayer. Number one, control the noise. Some things you just can't wrap your brain around. So number one is the noise control and brain wrapping. You have to every day wake up and say, you know what? I can't wrap my brain around that, because I got things I need to do and take care of myself. And you got that right. I think there's a lot of Black people who are going to have to vote, remorse and supporting Biden. And the Democrats, even if they have remorse, there's a lot of people have remorse and say, well, he's better than Trump. And I want to do a video on that. It's called He's Better Than Trump. But I'm not going to go into the Trump because, or should have, or could have, or would have, because Trump is not president at this time. Who is president is Biden. And there's a responsibility as we as constituents and citizens in how this administration is managing this country and how it's affecting all of us. And if we would want Trump back or not, we still have to go through these bumpy rides for the next 3 years, and we have to address it. I woke up this morning thankful for life as well. And I think every morning there is a grace of welcomeness and being grateful to be able to wake up, to see, and to hear. So I totally agree with that. But I think the first thing is the noise that we have in the room. There's a lot of noise in the room, and there's a lot of noise in America. And there's a lot of noise on these talk shows and radios and blogs and Instagram. Marginalize that energy on what you want to do with that, and sit down with a piece of paper and focus on yourself. Number two, for me, I'm a born again Christian. And so I'm going to tell you from a spiritual perspective. I believe in body, soul, and mind. And I believe if you have body, soul, and mind, you need to have God give you a direction on that plan of the body, soul, and mind thinking. And that is, what is your plan? What is your plan as far as if you're one of the people that I'm talking about, you ain't made no payments to your mortgage, you've made no rent payment, boo-boo. You need to sit down and find some family members that you can collaborate. You need to find a barter system. Look, Mr. Brown, I kind of screwed up. Can we work together on this rent? Or find a family member and say, look, can I move in and can I help you pay some rent? And then I stay on your couch until I can get it going for myself. You need to stop this madness of thinking this is going to, fix itself and that Biden's going to be your savior, or the mayor, or Garcetti, or either a crazy ass Newsom in California, whatever states you're in. You need to have a plan, because you quiet the noise and then you listen to God and you have a conversation with God and yourself and say, this is what's going on in my life. God, forgive me for being foolish and not paying my rent and my mortgage. Some of y'all ain't paying nothing, and then taking the money and not putting it inside. And if you didn't do any of that and you say, I didn't do that, I don't have all that going on, but you still got the noise. You got chatter. You have to control that noise. If we're going to continue to talk about Democrats and Republicans and libertarians, forget them parties, man. Because right now, this is about a survival game on top of, staying healthy and living and being forced to take a drug, but you have no idea what's inside it. What's inside these drugs that they want to put in you? I said nanos, but that's a whole nother conversation. Noise, God's plan. The next thing I would say, once you've realized, okay, I've made some mistakes, how can I do better? The do better is the planting of the seeds. Write that down. Planting of the seeds. What seeds do you plant good in your life? I talked about in the other videos. I've told you there are people in your life who are just messy, and all they do is gossip, and they talk about everybody. They talk about other family members. You call them up. You need to time yourself on buffoonery, people. You need to time yourself on how much negative energy you're going to let stay in your circle, how much negative things you're going to let happen to you physically, financially, and how much crap food you're eating, all of that stuff. You have to say, you know what? I'm going to inhale. I'm going to exhale. I'm going to cancel out the noise. I'm going to look at the plan and plant the seeds. And if it starts right now, let it be so. Because see, these people are already planting seeds. Did you hear what Janet Jill said? Did you hear what Kevin said? Go back and watch the beginning of this video. If you just chimed in, please click the like button and let the search engines know that you like me. And then afterwards, if you can make comments, that also drives more traffic to the videos. I do these videos to share my heart of where I think I can be of assistance to save and help somebody. And if I do that, I feel that I'm doing good. And I want you to do well. I want you to love life. I want you to look at it from a different perspective of where you say God has a plan for you where you have had conversations with yourself. Don't let people think you're crazy because you're talking to yourself. You need to identify your wrongs, your rights, and your corrections. Again, the noise, the plan, and the planting of the seeds. And if you do those things in the right order, meaning, okay, I've talked to God, I'm planting some seeds, I'm saving some because I kind of screwed up. It's too high for me to live here anyway. I'm not gonna go back to that yep job I had that I didn't like, or I just didn't go to work. The EDD money has ended, and I need to plant my seed, and I have done that. There is a harvest that you will receive. Once you receive that harvest, whatever it is, financial, emotionally, spiritually, health-wise, your body's looking good, you have to be alert. As the alerts come out, the red lights come on. I want you to be alerted that people will not be happy for you. People will question you, and people will have you get off your course of this plan, because I'm talking to you, and if you can imagine a circle, you're just going to keep doing the same thing, because at the end of the circle is the harvest. And then how do you start the circle back up again? You quiet the noise. And the noise is the media, it's the public, it's the shifting of government's rules and regulation. We could potentially get shut down by the holiday season and do another shut the whole country down because pandemic has exploded to the next level that we could never imagine it to do. There's so many projections of the fact that people who got the shot are higher in as carrier factor. You remember, this is a really nasty cold, and we're moving towards the winter time, and we're moving towards winter months. So there's a lot of projection of is government being able to take advantage of COVID and making it work in their best interest financially. So even though you may be harvesting right now, you need to keep in mind the noise is coming. So you've got to be able to quiet your mind, to sit back and create the plan so that you can plant your seeds in the wintertime. Like a lot of times we plant in our harvesting for the spring and for the summer, right? We plant in the wintertime. So keep that in mind. Watch your spending and watch the American dollar. The dollar is something to think about, to look at. I have zero income with no employment, no benefits. I have paid every bill on time, and I will run out of money soon. Okay, that you're in that situation. You need to use that plan I told you. Quiet the noise. Come up with a plan. See, I'm not going to tell you a plan because I don't know your life. I don't know you personally. But I would say you need to write down noise, plan, plant the seeds. Find somebody, a family member, a friend that you can barter with and tell them your situation, and you work with someone you know. Okay? Don't expect government to intervene. They may or may not come in. You may or not be able to receive Section 8 or welfare. If you said you're from Afghanistan, you might have a shot, which isn't right to say that, but it's true. I ask God guidance and protections, but I notice in these days a lot of young people my age isn't spiritual and do not believe in God. Blessings. That is so true. But like a lot of people my age that don't believe in God and aren't spiritual. If we talk about God and spirituality, we talk about the discernment of the Spirit of God, right? And when Jesus died on the cross for our sins, and then he rose again, and he sat with his disciples, and he said to them, I leave you a comforter. I leave you a teacher. I leave you a guidance person. That's the Holy Spirit. And what you're going to find is, as believers in these times, there's a lot of noise. Let's go back, Kate, and talk about the noise. There's a lot of noise in the air. We have to quiet the noise. And the way we quiet the noise is leaning not unto our own understanding, but leaning unto the Holy Spirit. Knowing that God has not forsaken us. He has not forgot us. That God is Jehovah Jireh. He is our provider. That God can heal us. He is our banner. He's our Tuscan. He's our protection. Okay? And we go to the next level when we're not at the lower level. So if you see people your own age, young or old, who don't have a spiritual connection, that means that you are with the wrong crowd. And you need to find those who have the right connections. And if you sit down and do those 4 steps I told you, the noise, the plan, the planting of the seeds, and the harvesting. And then during the harvesting, that's when the noise comes up. Oh my God, I saw that you did la 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 la, and you got money and la 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 la, or you got extra food, or you got a great job, or you got a place to stay. And can you do la 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 la? And you tell them no, because you have to plant the seeds so you have your own harvest. Look, when you find out people aren't spiritual and all people want to do is wait and let you succeed so they can take advantage of you, then you've missed the mark. There's a story in the Bible that talks about the maidens that were waiting for the king to come. And there are 3 maidens that were just waiting, and they did not prepare. And they told them, they said, you need to have oil in your lamp. And these women were slothful and lazy. They said, girl, I ain't put no oil in my lamp. I get some from Joanna. She always hook me up anyway. I'm asleep. If he comes, don't worry. We'll follow the crowd. The king came. Nightfall came. They did not have any oil in their lamp. They knocked on house to house. The houses were boarded up. They were closed down. They went to the oil shop. It was closed down. I'm giving you a paraphrase of this Bible story. And so Shaniqua and Betty and Tina got together, and they just followed the light and the fumes. See, some people benefits off of the fumes. They didn't even do their judicial of taking care of their own lives. They riding off the fumes. And then when they get to the event, there's some fools that sneak them in the back like they earned the right to be there. And so you get mad because they got in. They should have never got in. But then the king finds out. He says, why are you here? Well, we're part of the party. Well, hold the lantern up to your face. Let me see who you are. Where's your pass to be in here? We don't have any pass to get in here. We didn't get no oil. He says, well, leave, for I do not know you. See, there's a preparation in the plans, and not letting the noise around you telling you all the wrong things to do get in your head. That's what I want you to understand, that you have to get out of that. The plan is to go ahead, okay, where's when I run out of money? Well, I don't know about running to no forest. Now you're doing a whole nother situation, Mr. Salt. I think the forest will be there, but after a while, if you're not used to living that lifestyle, you might come back to civilization and it might catch you off guard. I think that you should seek counseling and talk to a good friend and a family member and think about those moves, because there's a lot of living off the grid. That's what I'm getting you telling me that you want to do. It's what they call live off the grid. You might want to do some research of people who are living off the grid and living in the forest before you make the decision. Angela says, I love it. I appreciate that. And again, it's that guidance that we need from God. It's that guidance that we need and that protection that we can understand that not only young people, but older people are affected by it too. So anyway, I appreciate you guys. Thank you so much for watching. Please get the like buttons up and share this video. If you have any more questions, leave it in the comments section. I think Janet Yellen and Jerome Powell are 2 people you have to pay attention to. There's a lot of monopoly going on in this country. And there's a lot of people on both sides of the aisles that are not always working in your best interest because they are disconnected from the every average day American people. My desire is to always be ground truth first, meaning that I will always listen to the ground and I will always talk to my people, meaning those who have the same ideology, not just Black people, but those who have the same ideologies, so that we can understand where this economy and where this country is going. Because most people, we all just don't know, because they are leading us down some dark valleys. And remember, this is a global pandemic. This is an economic pandemic, and other countries are working on their recovery. When you hear them in this panel, which a lot of you guys may have chimed in late, we saw Jerome Powell and different people within Congress discuss the financial market, and someone said the word Greece, and Greece is an ouch, because Greece is really bad. And if we become like Greece, we're going to have some major pandemonium going on in this country. I am waiting for people who are good, civilized American people to start stepping up and speaking out in their local communities, from the state level to the city level to the federal level. When you see injustice, you can't sit back and be quiet. You have to be part of the noise making, but the right noise making, so that it's rightly done. I tell you, you need to surely have a plan of action, and you truly should have seeds planted so that you're going to have some kind of harvest, hopefully, if not by the end of this year or by the beginning of January. But if you are not planting and you're not thinking and you're just basically co-oping and then just having conversations with no substance with other friends, or watching people talk about black men talk about white women and black men talking about black women and black women talking about black men. That's just too much going on. Look at your own life, people. Get a grip on the table and hold yourself and get it together. Because that's what we're all trying to do. Ain't none of us perfect. We don't have the money that a lot of these people do. These congressional leaders are multimillionaires. Janet Yellen is a multimillionaire. Jerome Powell, these people are millionaires. So they make these slight pluses and minus adjustments that can destroy you on a local level, and you don't even know why it's happening. And I'm telling you is why. I'm telling you right now, the why is to watch this false inflation. It's false inflation, and constantly they've been pumping money in. Now they said they're gonna cut off the EDD, but they're gonna allow these people to stay home and not pay any mortgage or rent. Something's got to shake and fall out of the tree, and it's not gonna be in your best interest. And if you're prepared, you can handle the fall. If you're prepared, you won't even realize it's fallen because you've already created your landing pad. You've identified that noise and you've set a plan of action. And the seeds that you have are the cushion and the cotton to catch you so that, again, you can go and start a harvest and keep planting and move forward from there. So I like that idea of that cycle thinking in the mind. So when you wake up, breathe. Get quiet. I don't care if you just sit 3 minutes and be quiet throughout the day, in the morning, afternoon, and be conscious of things that don't encourage you and that pull you down. So anyway, I appreciate you guys. Thank you so much for watching. It's good to have good people who think alike. We have the same ideology. We have the same viewpoints. And we want to move forward. And that's what we want to do. Leave your comments down below. Tell me what you think. Make sure you're to watch me, Kevin. Thank you, Kevin, for your courtesy of just sharing that information. If you come in at the beginning of this video or late at the end, please watch it from the beginning and share with your friends. God bless you and have a good day.